first call of 2023 Meshery Development Meeting. If you haven't got a chance to introduce yourself to the community, this is your time. Unmute yourself and feel free to introduce. And if you haven't written your name in the attendees list, make sure you write your name. I'm sharing the link of meeting minutes in chat. So I see a couple of newcomers on the call. So Harsh Mishra and Ved Ratan. So is this the first time you are attending this call? Would like to introduce yourself?
Yes, sir. Hello there, everyone. Am I audible?
Yep, you are.
So good evening to all the respected members here. So I've currently started looking into the various projects of Meshery. So I'm quite new to the whole service mesh landscape as of now, because I'm learning DevOps right now. So after Kubernetes, I was trying to get into all this stuff, and this got me very much interested. So I'll be attending all these meetings regularly so that I can get an idea what's going on, and I can actually plan where I could contribute to the community.
That's great. Thank you for your introduction, Harsh. Hope you will enjoy the call. So next up we have Ved Ratan. Ved Ratan, would like to introduce yourself?
Hello everyone. Myself Vedathan. I am a third year undergrad at Technology, and I recently heard about Meshery Repo and found it quite interesting and quite beginner friendly. Want to contribute to open source and start their contribution journey in open source. So I think this could be a best start for my contribution towards the open source. So I would love to contribute to this open source community.
Yep. Awesome, Ved Ratan. You're at the right place to contribute to open source and learn new stuff.
Thank you.
So with that, I think we can go ahead with today's agenda item. So first up, we have Ashish on mesh model changes in adapter and few other items. So Ashish, would like to share your screen?
Yes, I would like to share my screen.
Thank you.
Okay, so wait a second. Yeah. Okay, so this item is something that might be interesting for someone who wants to contribute to anything Golang related, who wants to get started at least, or get to know about the code base while contributing. So recently, one change was made inside of a major change was made inside of Meshery, which is that I wouldn't brief about it much, but yeah, we were using basically a key value store, and from that key value in the backend, and now we have moved to basically a SQL based approach. And related to that, yeah, no, this is not the one, but yeah, here. Wait a second. So one of these, I'll post a link in the chat. A related PR is the one in the adapters. This one, which is the upgrade of Meshkit. So we had few functions like these two helper functions. These two helper functions were present across are actually currently present across all the adapters, and they all have this same exact code. And this is the annotation. This used to be the annotation that we used to identify resources deployed by Meshery, so that like if you use Meshery to deploy the resources, and then we discover it using our using mesh thing, which is one of the Meshery's component. When we discover your resources, we can do a whole bunch of things with it. Because we have attached annotations onto it and labels of also. So yeah, these two functions were spread across all the are currently spread across all the adapters, and also so this wasn't needed, so that was moved to the Meshkit. Meshkit is a you can like Meshkit is a central piece of helper tools, as well as basically all the schemas that are used by all the Meshery components, all the helper functions, all the structs that are common to all the Meshery components like Meshery adapters and Meshery server are put into Meshkit. So these two helper functions were also put into Meshkit, and this small change just upgrades that. Basically, .17 has those helper functions. So in this adapter, it upgrades from 1.6 to 1.7, and also in these two places where we were using this local function, it basically calls the same function but from this particular package. And this package, you can see, if you'll go inside of the file, you could see what that package is. So you can take this particular PR as a reference, and we would need to propagate this change across all the adapters. So like we have a whole bunch of, so if you go over to Meshery.org, you would see that so there is Meshery console, Meshery traffic mesh. Meshery Istio is the one on which I just made this PR, and this PR is merged. So this exact same change, so that is the Meshery meshkit upgrade, and these two function displacements are going to be basically we want them across all these other adapters as well. So people who want to get started, people who want to take up these, but so basically we have like 6 to 7 adapters we have. So we would have more adapters than people to contribute to those adapters. So even if you want to take like 2 adapters, you can take up those adapters and you can do this meshkit upgrade and look at these functions. And while you're doing it, maybe, explore the code base. Doing this, you can land a PR while learning a bit about the code base. So yeah, that was so basically that was a call for volunteers as well as a minor upgrade about this is the final change in the adapters related to mesh models, which I would go into detail right now, but I've briefed in other meetings as well about what mesh models are. If someone has a doubt, then I'll go into detail about that particular doubt. So yeah, that we would need. So in this particular bullet point that I have, I'll just create this extra sub point, and anyone can write their name if you want to. And yeah, before the next call, you might get your PR landed. So this is pretty straightforward pull request. This is pretty straightforward ask. Does anyone have any doubt regarding what the ask is, or what needs to be done, or anything like what mesh models are, or what?
Good question, Ashish. Like for those that might not be familiar with, well, with the code base or mesh models or some of the things that you'd said, but they do want to jump in, given that there's 10 adapters, they want to jump in and give this a shot. Is if they just, it sounds like if they reference what's been done here, you're more or less, while some of the adapters are slightly different than one another, they're mostly the same. And so for the most part, it would be, they would just kind of follow along with what's been done here. Is that right?
Yeah. So basically, for example, here we have a function named as handle istio core component. In other adapters, you would have handle traffic mesh core components, or let's say in console, you'll have handle console core component. So the function signature would be different depending upon what service mesh adapter you're looking at. Otherwise, the mechanism is almost exactly the same. You can use this as an analogy to find out where you need to make that change, and you will find these particular functions, these small functions spread across all the adapters. So yeah, this would be a pretty straightforward change if you take this particular PR as a reference. Any other questions?
Why doesn't Zoom have a gopher emoji? Oh, sorry. It has a rust emoji. It has a crab. I don't know what's going on with the. Okay, just random question.
Yeah. So one other thing I would like to plug is a little bit of plugging my other meeting that I host, which is tomorrow. This is a bi-weekly meeting that takes place every other week. This is the build and release call. This will be this year's first build and release call. Here we discuss anything related to CI, end-to-end tests, Cypress tests, UI tests, unit tests, everything related to testing, and basically GitHub actions and all. So if you're interested in those things, join this call. It would be helpful to get, like, we have some open issues, so it would be helpful for people to people already have their open PRs, so we review those PRs, see if they have any blockers related to those. So if you want to join in, you can join in and grab a bunch of issues, get to know about the project and how the workflows are spread out across all the repos. This can be helpful. Yeah, this will be a helpful call for everyone, even for beginners as well. So yeah, this call takes place at 12 Central Time. So tomorrow at that time, see you guys there. So that was just a quick reminder for tomorrow's CI call. And with that, I'll stop talking.
Thanks, Ashish. So moving on to next item, we have Abhi. So Abhi would like to go next.
Yeah. So yeah, so I'll be talking about design YAML and basically most prominently adding labels and annotations to the root and cleaning the final YAML file. So there are, I mean, for the Meshery server, there are two clients which create pattern files, sorry, design files and consume it. And yeah, right. So basically two source or two clients or two different web browser pages that creates pattern file or design file. I'm saying pattern file, sorry for it. So yeah, the first one is Meshery UI, where you can create your design file with the configurator, and that's how you can do it, like whatever you will be doing it here in the form. It will be you will be creating a equal replica or I mean the YAML file for what you are changing here in this form. So, and the second one is mesh map. So this PR that I have created has uh, is about cleaning the resultant YAML file and actually moving some fields like name, namespaces, namespace, labels, and annotations to the root of the service. So this is called a service right now, right? So this is the service YAML, and in each component will be, I mean, each component in the mesh map will be called service here in the design YAML. So these namespace and labels and annotations should be the root field, and it's not right now. So that's why some deployment fails, or some I mean the labels and annotations don't go well when we just deploy it in the Kubernetes cluster, right? So that what the ask is, to put that in the correct place so that Kubernetes, or at least our design or the pattern engine understands it. So there was a requirement of I mean half thing is already done, where this client is actually able to, I mean whatever I add, it will create the appropriate YAML in the correct manner. But when I'm doing the same thing with the mesh map, I'll be creating some duplicates and replicas, and actually the labels and annotations won't go inside the root of the services or root of the components, but they will go inside the settings construct. So that's why, I mean, this thing needs to be picked out or needs to be corrected. So I have created the PR, but as Ashish has told that, I mean, we don't require the changes here in this server, but actually in the mesh map itself. So yeah, that's the update, is that I'll be closing off this PR, but that's what the asking, and that's where we are putting our efforts in cleaning up the design file and adding appropriate things in the root file so that Kubernetes can understand it.
So comments or feedback for Abhi?
So they should be taken out from settings. I don't think last time I reviewed the PR, they were duplicated, and basically they were taken first. They were put into settings and then they were taken out from settings. So there was this two-step thing was going on. So basically, imagine like this. So things like spec, or for config map, you have like data. All those things are part of settings inside of our service, and everything that like things like name, namespace, labels, annotations that exist outside of those fields should be on the root level. So yeah, by that logic, do not keep anything. Although when you open the RJSF form, it's hard to see what's inside and what's outside, but like those four fields should exist outside and not inside. Everything except for those four fields should be part of the settings, and yeah, about everything that is not part of the spec or not part of those four fields should be outside. Like currently we have only four of such things, and
Yes.
three of it, yeah.
Yeah, that's what I'm aiming to. And I created it knowing like yeah, I mean, yeah, I'll do it. I'll have to close this PR for that matter, because I think that this change is not required anymore, because I mean, equivalent to this change in the front end will be required in one of the other repository, right?
Yeah.
Yes.
Also, to answer one question that Lee has in the chat is service, the word service that we have over here. So as we move from OM to mesh models, first of all, the backend constructs are changing. So the way we do our deployments, the way we do our validation, the way UI processes things, all those things will change first. And after we are done with those changes, this design file is the front end facing, you can say the client facing thing, or the way we package stuff. So yeah, we can, because there is a decoupling between those things, we can rename these things to however we want to rename them. So for example, that word traits over here is still present, and this traits word would also be dropped, because as we move on to mesh models, that actual trait construct that we have initially is being dropped, because traits like currently now only correspond to things like properties, and not anything other than the properties. And in our mesh models, we'll have things like patterns and relate. So basically things would be different, and those things would be at the end reflected back onto the way our design file looks. So yeah, this is on the end of the whole roadmap of our move towards mesh models, to change the structure of this design, so the services thing would go away as well.
Yeah. Okay. Any more questions? Yeah.
Thank you, Abhi. So let's move to next agenda item, which is by Nitish on JSON schema for mesh model constructs.
Yeah. Okay, so as you guys know, we are moving to mesh model. So if you want to know what mesh model is, there is a doc which I'll put the link of the doc here if you want to know more about what mesh model is and all those stuff. So essentially, like, we are in a migration period where we move from OM to mesh model, and there are some core constructs in mesh model. We have components, we have design, we have patterns and things like that. So what I have done is in Meshery server repository, like, I've created a PR where we add those JSON schema for the core constructs of mesh model. So there are multiple use cases for this. By defining the schemas of these constructs, we can actually, there are a lot of benefits for this. One thing that for example, like, we can actually publish it to a JSON schema store that's hosted somewhere, and then, like, let's say that if you're using VS Code, and then, like, you want to write a particular component or a relationship for a relationship which is actually a construct of mesh model, then we can actually use the schema to validate your values against it. So that's essentially, you can do validation, which is and also, like, it enforces some things that some sort of conversions that we use inside Meshery. Yeah, I'll drop a link to this PR in the chat, so if you guys want to take a look at it. And also, like, if you think so, essentially, like, this is based on the draft 7 schema, and yeah, obviously this is pretty minimal right now. If you this will expand based on, like, the new constructs that will be introduced into mesh model or stuff. So yeah, if you think that this can be improvised or optimized, then feel free to add a comment in the PR, or point out, like, this can be made better by doing something like this. Yeah. So yeah, this is what I wanted to discuss.
Yeah, Harkrat, did you have any comments on this?
I was just having the look on the PR, like, today, like, yeah.
Okay. Yeah. Okay. So you might, but you just haven't gotten a chance to review.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. Yeah, there's a couple of, the Zoom chat is somewhat active. It has a couple of questions for, really for everybody that's on the call. Some of the questions are about, well, the nomenclature that we have, or maybe the lack of it. Sometimes if people try and refer to a particular portion of the UI, different people call it different things, and not that one is better than the next, but it just makes it difficult to converse and to. So earlier, Ashish had said, well, yeah, as you fill in the RJSF forms, it's like, it sounds like some military term, some rank or something. I don't know, anyway, I'm wondering if there shouldn't be, if we should just enhance maybe the Meshery architecture slides to have maybe just one screenshot or a couple of screenshots, and it names these various areas, or these various components, so that it becomes kind of a standard vernacular or nomenclature, I guess. Is one thought. Another one is we're calling this new, set of constructs inside of Meshery a mesh model, and that follows suit with a lot of portmanteau type naming around here. But I don't know, maybe that's too much, or maybe it imbues like a concept of it being only pertinent to service meshes, and it's not. It's certainly focused on anything that will touch Kubernetes or run on Kubernetes. This model supports. Beyond that, it would support any cloud provider. Maybe I shouldn't say any, but like multiple clouds as well, and modeling and provisioning and lifecycle management of that infrastructure, and all the features that it's positioned to do. So are we? It's food for thought for all of you as you hear mesh model or one of the plugins like Mesh Map. Does that convey to you that it's such a service mesh centric thing? If it does, that could be very limiting to how people perceive the value of the project, and that would be we would regret that. Other things, though, just to reinforce some of what's happening here. This is kind of neat, because this is a groundbreaking moment for this new model, this new system of constructs. This is fundamental to how it is that Meshery comprehends the infrastructure that it's managing, how it models that infrastructure. Couldn't think of a better word. And consequently, how it is able to configure it, and how expressive it can be. And so if you've been hung around Kubernetes for a while, or a lot of the Kubernetes projects, well, no doubt you're familiar with YAML and its cousin JSON, and how sometimes difficult it can be to understand what the heck it's trying to say, but other times how helpful it can be that these such constructs that are fundamental to how Meshery works are typified, so to speak, how they're well described and very granularly so. So now is the time to be quite granular and say there's a string here, it's a display name. Great, so I guess you can put in a $sign as the first part of that display name, and that's fine. The system wouldn't care, because that's how we're saying that it's just a string. So, okay, good if that's true. But if it isn't, we should put in a restriction. Anyway, so I guess you can have only one display name, or is that required? Gosh, I'm not sure. But so those are the types of questions and things that we should really scrutinize. The time spent scrutinizing now will save heartache and pain later. There's just an initial couple of core mesh model models, constructs is a more appropriate, constructs that are being listed here. This thing of a component, a relationship, there'll be policies at some point. It's probably about time for a visual diagram of how these interchange. Yeah, so I just wanted to stir up some thoughts and discussion and give some further context as to what's going on. Also encourage a few of you that are on the call to like step in. If you're like me and you're looking at this wall of code that you don't understand, but it doesn't really matter as long as you can just answer simple questions like what I was just asking, which is like, hey, is there anything validating this string? You know, put your QA hat on and take a look. So anyway, so I guess part of what I'm doing is publicly obligating someone to coming out forth with maybe a visual, just a diagram of these constructs and how they touch one another. Right now, if you're looking for that and want to digest it, I suspect the best place for that is there's a database table design or database schema design. It's called the Meshery object model. So we'll probably drop a link to that. Okay, anyway, any thoughts, reflections from folks? And so, yeah, good. So the next up was Abdullah. Oh, you got yourself a design spec. Okay. And so this design spec is on Meshery CTL. Nice. And Abdullah, you are on. Yeah.
Assuming you can hear me and you can see my screen, to give some background, Meshery has providers which let you extend features, which lets you add extensible features to Meshery. And other than that, we have Meshery CLI, and Meshery CLI uses a config file called as the mesh config. So this PR which I wrote adds support for enforcing a provider for Meshery through the mesh config. Now I'm working on a Meshery CTL command to do the same thing. Right now, this spec is a very rough overview of what the command would look like. I did not have access to the template for the design spec until a few days back. Going over the design spec, so we will have the Meshery CTL system provided command, and so this will be the base command, and we'll have a few command options for it. Firstly will be the view, where you can see what the current enforced provider is. Then there will be a list command. Through Meshery CTL system provider list, you will be able to see what are the available providers that can be enforced. Then there can be a set command to set the value of to enforce the value of a provider for the current mesh config context. There will be a switch command to switch it to any one of the values from list, and then we can have reset command. And the difference between the set and switch command is the switch command gives you the option to restart the Meshery deployment, whereas the set command will be applied the next time Meshery would be deployed. And similarly, the reset command is for currently by default there is no provider enforced. This might change in the future. So if after setting after enforcing a provider, you would want to reset the provider to whatever was default, you can use the Meshery CTL system provider reset command. And yeah, so that's it from my side. Does anyone have any suggestions?
So can you go over what reset does again? So the default behavior is to not enforce any provider. So reset means that, so if I start from a deployment which didn't have that environmental variable set, and then I used this command to set a particular provider, to enforce a particular provider, then after that reset would mean that it would change it back to not enforcing a provider.
No, actually, when you don't have a mesh config in your system, when you run a Meshery command for the first time, it creates a default mesh config. So in the default mesh config, the provider field isn't present. And so this is what I've considered as like the default behavior. And if you were to use the reset command, it basically resets the so in the default mesh config generated, the provider is not set. And similarly, if you were to run the reset command, the provider field would be removed from the mesh config. That makes sense.
Yeah. I have a couple of other questions. I might list those in the PR that you have.
Okay. And I had another query. So I've been trying to get this provider, this endpoint work locally on my system. So the expected behavior is we have the Meshery provider, and / capabilities gives me a JSON of the capabilities of the Meshery provider. And I've been trying to get it work locally, but I've been unable to do so. So these are some examples of how I've tried to get it to work. So I've used /API /provider /capabilities. I get an HTML page instead of the capabilities of capabilities.json of the Meshery provider.
Yeah,
I've tried
because you don't have token set. This endpoint is most probably under the authentication middleware, so you would need a JOT token after logging in.
So after logging into Meshery, I need a token to call this
If you
endpoint, is
have
what you're saying.
So if you have logged into Meshery right now in your browser, from there you can, if you go into the cookies, you'll find a provider set to Meshery and a token set to the whatever token there is. So you can take from here or from curl or from wherever you can set those two cookies or pass them as headers. So we make both of those checks. So yeah, all I'm saying is that since that you might also, so if you're using, I guess you were using Postman, and if you're not passing the token, you might also not be able to, not just you won't be able to access any other endpoint which is authenticated. So make sure to use you can use get token from here or just, just go to developer tools and from there take out both the cookies.
Yeah, sure. Okay, I'll do that. That's it from my side.
Yeah, Hussaina has a question in chat for you, Abdullah.
Okay, so is there a need for a set provider when switch provider also does this? So when a provider is set using set provider, it is not enforced on the current Meshery deployment. The Meshery needs to be redeployed for the changes to take effect. Whereas when you do switch provider, and there can be a -y flag, and that basically redeploys Meshery. So that was my reasoning for having both a set provider and a switch provider. And there is a similar behavior for Meshery CTL system channel, where there is a set and switch. You can set a channel, but the changes are not visible on the current deployment. And whereas if you were to use a switch channel and -y, Meshery gets redeployed to reflect the channel that was set.
So just to clarify, you would be so a reset will basically a switch or a reset or anything that changes the provider will cause a Meshery restart, right?
No, set would not cause a Meshery restart. Switch would cause a Meshery restart. A reset would just set the mesh config to the default, which is not having a provider enforced.
Okay, but still that change wouldn't be reflected in Meshery server, right? Because although the config will have no enforced provider, if we go from
Yes,
okay.
you're right. Yeah. So set and reset would not reflect it on the current deployment, whereas switch would.
Okay, I'll leave rest of my comments on the doc.
Yeah, I hope no more comments for Abdullah.
One more. Abdullah, you did your homework. The command, I mean, yeah, that nuance between set and switch, and that's a nuance. Like, and yeah, you would have had to have studied. I mean, you did exactly the right thing. It's like, hey, are you preparing a consistent user experience as related to another existing command? Yeah, exactly. You're perpetuating the, the same experience, the imbuing the same meaning behind the same behaviors behind the verbs. I would take Husseina's question maybe slightly further, or maybe one step forth and say, well, I'll say it like this, that it's I only got a brief look at the design spec and as you were sharing it, and I would say you're bordering on having done too good of a job, or which is to say, hey, we would do well to go in and just prioritize those verbs because some of them might see use once in a blue moon, whereas others of them it would be like every time. And so, yeah, so there would be a point of diminishing returns, like before you made it through the entire list. I don't know. But yeah, just a thought. Maybe you make it through the whole list, but just a quick prioritization activity would, I think, be helpful. There's a link in the Zoom chat. It's probably good for everybody to see. It's just actually, I'm going to share because at least for my part, in the time that we've been together as a community, I can't tell you how many times I've shared this doc, or like a lot of the docs. But this is a healthy one because you're all encouraged to do this. It's like, hey, if you have an idea about what you think any of the projects here should do, certainly this call is about Meshery, but there's other projects going on. And there's community stuff too. This is just a short document that helps, that says, here's how you would go create a new document. And in this case, kind of like a design spec. The design specs they offer a format, a template to kind of help fill in, various considerations about how to make sure that a given piece of functionality is well done. And then they offer a consistent review format for all those that participate. And then as you follow through these instructions, it'll also help ensure that any community member has access to the doc and can comment. And so just took this opportunity to point out this doc for how to create a doc.
Okay, thank you, Lee. So moving on to next item, we have Harkirat on tooltip support in form context. Harkirat, you would like to share?
Okay, so yeah, so we use RJSF as a form component for like design configurator as well in the mesh map as well. So recently we regressed in like when we ever drop a component, so we were seeing like a class name overlapping, which was happening when we send the component back to Meshery. So it was just with the tooltip. So I added the tooltip in the form context as well, so it can be used differently in the mesh map and in the Meshery itself. And rest was some fonts and the tooltip refactor in the design configurator itself. So that's pretty much about RJSF, and yeah, that's about it. Thank you.
Thanks. Yeah. Hey, Harkirat, a quick question. Inside of the design configurator or inside of Meshery's UI in the design area, those in-depth forms that people fill in to configure the components, that's what you're referring to right now, and some customization of the tooltips. I can't remember. Do tooltips show in that user interface as well?
Actually, the problem was like I defined the tooltip in the mesh map. So what happened is like in the recently playground release, when Ashish pointed this out, like when we drop a component, so there was like problem with the class name overlapping. So you see some of a buggy behavior with RJSF. So what I did is like a kind of what we say is like it's just referencing that tooltip in the form context itself, so which can be used overall in the Meshery as well in the mesh map as well. So yeah. And with design configurator, what I did is like as we know, like the tooltip is defined in Meshery, so kind of like we use different themes and for different fonts in the Meshery and mesh map. So kind of adding some flags and here and there around around the design configurator. So that's pretty much about it. So right.
Nice. Okay. Yeah, I think the answer was yes, but there are, yeah, nice. Sorry, I didn't mean to take, well, I meant to take sharing away from you for a second because I was just going to show the design configurator UI for context for everyone. And I was just going to do it in the Meshery playground and then realized that wasn't available. But now that I've confused everybody and like maybe one last thing and I'll try to shut up. And that is, hey, if you like a lot of us have difficulty getting Meshery up and going. And it's largely not because it's difficult to get Meshery up and going. Maintainers like Husseina have worked pretty hard to make sure that it, like you can just run a single bash script and then have the whole thing downloaded, installed and up and running and in your browser. Like it's pretty cool. But there's other stuff that gets in people's way. You've got to have Docker, or you need to have or Kubernetes, or you have Kubernetes, but the networking like there's just like 95 things that will go wrong. And so we talked about this particular initiative in the past. This is any number of you that are on the call and many who aren't have worked on getting Meshery a sandbox, a Meshery sandbox, a playground out there for all of us to just, well, to go in and use a hosted copy of Meshery. And I think last time we met, geez, which would have been last year, like way back last year, would have, 4 days ago, would have talked about releasing this. It's time to release this. It's time to open it up. Just even if for nothing else, just as like a personal favor to me or to others that have worked on it, can you go try this? Go sign up here and like go try the playground, see if it doesn't make sense or you can't access it or it's broken, or it would be great if you all could do that, because you just need a web browser, and it would be nice to make an announcement about this that has less bugs than it might have now. If anybody can find a bug, we'll probably go tweet about it or something, but we'll like go talk about it. See if you can, go sign up, try it out, if you would.
Yeah, thank you, Lee. So do sign up for Meshery Playground. So let's move to the next agenda item, which is again by Ashish on writing SVG file system for mesh model components.
Yeah, I'll quickly go over it. So there is an open PR. I have this one. It has a bunch of merge conflicts that I'll solve before the end of the call. So yeah, the PR, what it does is, so yeah, so the designer that Harkirat showed you just now, it has a bunch of SVGs for each of the components, like a namespace for Kubernetes components like namespace, and for Istio components like virtual service. So basically, each of those components are defined by what you're seeing right now. This is a component definition. And if you go over API mesh model / component / the model name, in this case, this is Kubernetes, and inside of Kubernetes, I'm looking at namespace. So you'll get this thing. And here you have things like what's the name of the model, the version, the schema of that particular namespace. The schema is basically the file from which you generate the form, which you then fill. and some things like API version and all those things. And what is relevant to this particular PR is this something inside of metadata. Inside of metadata, we have a few fields like logo, URL, model display name, etc., etc. And one of those fields is SVG color and SVG white. Before, as of now, because my PR is not merged yet, this SVG color and SVG white used to be the whole content of the SVG, which was not much useful for the UI. So what this PR does is, instead of having that field correspond to the entire content of the SVG, it gives you a path to the exact path that you can hit on the server, from where you can retrieve that particular SVG. So for example, when you load a namespace component, it will give you this particular path. And if you just so all the UI will have to do is, for each of the components, go inside metadata and look at, like, let's say SVG color, and just go and hit this particular endpoint, and you'll find this particular the exact SVG that you need, the exact icon that you need. For SVG white, it would be a different icon, and the same goes for any other component like service. From here, you can take the exact path, and the UI will be the server would be serving from these particular files from the file system. And the structure has been described here as well, not in a very clean manner, I would say. I did this, but yeah, that's so. What I was asking was from Abhi or any UI contributor to basically check out this PR and to test that whether this approach is if this approach has any drawbacks or shortcomings that I didn't see through, whether it's okay to use this particular field, and if things can get slower or whatever, because these currently the SVGs are hard coded inside of the Next.js build that we do statically. So things are pretty fast, and with this approach there will have to be a network call. So yeah, so for each of the components and all of these to basically to save time on any authentication and all of these endpoints are also unauthenticated. So yeah, you don't need a token to or anything to retrieve these SVGs. These are open endpoints. So I would ask Abhi to give this PR a look, and I'll resolve the merge conflicts. And if everything is fine, then we can go ahead with this PR. This is another step forward in the direction of mesh models.
Okay, okay, Ashish. By the way, the last comment that I have that I just saw is, if you go to service SVG, just for that matter.
Which
Yes,
one?
Anyone?
This one. Okay.
Yeah. We keep this page. Okay. Anyways, yeah, you are here. So although this can be helpful in the component store in mesh map, but we do our own calculations for cytoscape with the help of shape and other properties. So most probably yeah, this SVG is fine for other places, and in Meshery in Meshery UI, in mesh map, and in visualizer, and in design panel, anywhere. But there should be I mean I should be, or UI should be able to reference the vector only. So by vector, I mean the Kubernetes icon only in the screen that you are sharing. So I mean
You're
that is
talking
the
about this
vector,
one?
and the shape, enclosing that vector is the complete SVG. But there should be a reference to the vector only and not the complete shape also. So I know I'm putting it right now because I just saw it.
And the same would go for other models as well, like Istio and.
Yes, yes. So something, I mean, shape itself says like what it is, right? So it is round triangle. It says like this should be round triangle. So either like, I mean, there is no harm in using that SVG that you are using here, or propagating it to the UI, but there should also be a raw vector that should be referenced. So
And that
I
would be
mean,
per component.
uh, yes, per component or per model, or would also work.
Okay, I would suggest that whatever you said, you can put that as a comment on my PR. So I can, yeah, we can discuss it from there. Thank you, Abhi.
Okay, yeah, sure.
Yeah, thank you, Abhi and Ashish. So let's move on to next item is dark mode final review by Harshit. Harshit would like to demo.
Not able to hear you.
Am I audible now? Hello.
Yep. Yeah, you
Yes.
are.
Okay, so yeah, last time we met, we actually find out some issues in the dark mode, and now it is resolved. And yeah, the main issues was the actually finding our perfect red in the notification as well as here. So it is a bright red that I have chosen here now, and I think it is going well. I mean, there are many things that I did here in the issues. So yeah, I request all to check that out, and let's merge this as soon as possible. So yeah.
Yeah, so I have just one question. So have you written down the approach anywhere in the docs for this?
Yeah, yeah, it is. It is well written in the docs itself. I mean, everything is clear.
Cool. Yeah. Harshit, you might want to drop a link to that doc just as to orientate people to the effort. And then also, I think it's in the same doc that you're looking for them to drop feedback, like specific feedback on,
Yeah, there's some. Okay, I am sending the doc then. Just a second.
Yeah, Abhi has shared the link in chat.
Okay, great. Thank you, Abhi. In the where do you find out the issues? I tick marked each one. So yeah, I think none of them can remain this. I actually written a solved in a bracket in each one of them.
Yeah, cool. This looks good. So I request everyone to give a quick try for Harshit's dark mode PR. So any final? Yeah.
Oh yeah, one other briefly, Harshit. Did you show everybody how to, if they were to go check out your PR, build Meshery UI, they can then see dark mode. And did you show everybody how to switch modes, switch themes?
Okay, yeah, it is not written in docs. I mean, I've shown it in the meetings, but yeah, that should be written there. Yeah.
Nice. And then in terms of the UX for switching modes, I think this is a temporary location. What's the thought as to what it would be permanently?
I'm thinking that we should have if we should have it here in the navbar, or we can also have it here. I've also seen this is also getting very popular for our dark mode, that we get a little moon here and just click it. And but yeah, here will also work out because placing it here cannot work out. I mean, if you want to click here, and it will just disturb the whole UI. So yeah.
Yeah, interesting. Yep. Good thoughts. Yeah, the upper right-hand corner is space is a precious commodity. It's actually less about space and more about just cognitive overload for the users. There's this like rule of 7. It's about 7 inputs, 7 controls that us humans do well with, like grokking at any given time. We've got quite a few. That said, like management software like this is often, well, some of it is like like terribly detailed in one screen. So it tends to lean itself toward being full of a lot of data. But one other thing to give some thought to is if under your avatar, if you were to visit your preferences, that also strikes me as an area where, if switching between themes isn't something that people do often, or maybe even if they do, just because we can't show them everything all at once, this might be a location for it as well. And you're on general right now, right? Yeah. Okay.
And currently we are not sending themes to preferences, right? Or are we?
No, we are just saving it in a local storage for now, not in preference.
Okay.
But placing a theme here, I mean, users can get a difficulty to that. Meshery also have a switching theme features. I mean, for honestly, I have not visited a preference much yet in the Meshery, so that can also be an issue. That's my point of view.
Yep. Cool. So any more comments for Harshit? If not,
there's one other from Uzair. I think he was asking the same thing you just did, Gaurav, which is just a confirmation then, Harshit, there's no persistence for a user's preference today, right? Irrespective of what provider they're using, is that accurate?
Yeah, for now, we are just using a local storage for now. We are not using a preference. It is being saved in that storage, and it also gets auto-enabled from that.
Yeah, well, not auto-enable. What you're saying that dark mode is enabled by default?
Not by default. It can be open by default, but it gets saved when we just switch to a dark mode. Next time we will only see a dark mode again. Not again. We will not see a light mode. But if we want dark mode at first, we can do it. We can also do that.
yep. Cool then. So yeah, we are just on time today. So I think we can cover all these items in the next call, or if anything is urgent, so we can cover now. So Lee, is there anything urgent from the remaining items that we need to cover, or should we shift them to next call?
There's the Meshery build and release meeting tomorrow, about 2 hours from now, I think. I encourage you all to go. It's but yeah, that's, I don't know, Happy New Year, I guess.
Yep. So do subscribe to Layer 5's community calendar to get access and details of all the meetings. And yeah, Happy New Year, everyone. Thank you for joining today. We'll meet next week.
I think I actually put my item all the way down in the. So anyway, it's a CI related item, so I'll talk about it in tomorrow's call.
Yeah, real quick, Raj, what's the topic?
So that's about updating the mesh model component docs on Meshery's website. Right now, it only updates for layer5.io. So we'll update on Meshery.io.
Yeah, let's move this item to just copy paste this item for tomorrow's call on build and release meeting minutes.
Yep, cool. Thanks, Raj. So, yep, again, thank you all for joining. Happy New Year. Bye.
Bye. Happy New Year.
Bye. Happy New Year.